Happy Friday and happy Fridays with Fidelman. I'm Cheryl Fidelman, the Conscious Codependence Coach and the founder of the Conscious Codependence Collective. Today's topic on Fridays with Fidelman is your traumatic identity. So I'll talk about what the traumatic identity is. This is not necessarily a brand new idea in the world of healing, but sort of my take on it. And and I'll bring in the idea that perhaps codependence is 100% an act of our traumatic identity. It's our traumatic identity's way of sustaining relationship. It's not us. It's not you. Codependence is not you. It's your traumatic identity. All right. Please like or subscribe to my channel. Keep the comments coming, and here we go. When I talk about my 3 tenets of conscious codependence, which are the want to be wanted, the need to be needed, or the need to prove oneself, those are all behaviors, if you will, or addictions or habits, automatic choices or decisions of our traumatic identity. When the want to be wanted kicks in, our traumatic identity is in the driver's seat. When the need to be needed kicks in, traumatic identity is in the driver's seat. When we get kicked into proving ourselves, it's our traumatic identity that is proving. Not only is it proving its point of view in the moment, it's proving its goodness, it's proving its validity, it's proving its life inside you, it's talking through you, it's talking for you. It's needing to prove its space in your life. It's needing to prove that it needs to speak for you in order for you to survive this moment. It's fooling you. It's tricking you. It's having you live in an illusion or a distorted view of the relationship with the other person, and most importantly, it distorts your view of yourself. Your traumatic identity is the part of you, myself included, the part of us that developed in order to survive our parents or guardians, one or more of their psychology. So we became, this is an overview. We go into this stuff much deeper in my work. And on Monday, we're going to have our free Conscious Codependence monthly class, and it will be on this topic, the traumatic identity. So we'll go even further into it then. But I want to be specific and kind of nitpicky with language right now, just for the idea of the traumatic identity. And what I want to say is not that I became a people pleaser. My traumatic identity has had me people please. And so in my work and through these videos, if you come to the free classes, I would request that you try on saying things like, I'm not codependent, my traumatic identity is codependent. It's not that I can't feel, it's that my traumatic identity can't feel. It's not that I don't have any preferences or I don't have an opinion. My traumatic identity tells me not to have one. I know it may sound weird. You might not have to say that out loud to other people, but you can start to say it to yourself. And it's not that I'm saying you're not responsible for your actions. It's, blame it on your traumatic identity. It's not at all what I'm saying. It's that as you move through your conscious codependence recovery, and you start to get really clear about the codependent messages that your traumatic identity is telling you, if you start to get really clear in the moments where you shut down or quiet down or set yourself aside, you start to get really clear in the part of you that gets really angry or really triggered or really activated, and pushes people away or pulls people in closer and closer because you're avoiding abandonment, right? So we overplease and overserve in order to avoid abandonment or ensure our worth or value to another person. All of those habits get really clear on what your particular codependent habits are, then you can get clear that it's actually your traumatic identity and it's not you. Again, not to say that you're not responsible for it, but when you start to talk to yourself like, I'm about to prove myself, I just tried to prove that was my traumatic identity that did that, that told me that I needed to do that. So it's really about your relationship with yourself and starting to notice, when you're hooked into your codependent tendencies and when you're not. When you're hooked into your codependent tendencies, that is your traumatic identity in the driver's seat. That is the identity that your parents or guardians created within you, consciously or unconsciously, mainly unconsciously. They're mainly, not knowing that we are developing a part of us that is not us, that gives us the capacity to survive them. Most parents are not aware of that because they're not even aware of their own traumatic identity that's running the show, that's causing you to form your own traumatic identity. And again, we are 100% responsible for the decisions, choices, and behaviors that our traumatic identity makes on our behalf. But the more we get to know our traumatic identity, identify it as such, the more we can choose another way of being. The more we can say, oh, this side is all of the clump of behaviors that has me be codependent and protect myself. And these are all of the behaviors that are not that. Whether it's your purity, your creativity, your curiosity, maybe you have a specific talent, gift, or passion of organizing, or math, or art, or creativity. Or you're just an amazing writer, or you're like super successful at something that you do, and that you feel like this is really the expression of really my truest nature. Like if my parents didn't do that thing that they did to me that had me form my traumatic identity, this is more of the thing that I would be. The more we get to know the choices and decisions of our traumatic identity, the more we can start to go, hey, traumatic identity, you don't need to protect me right now. I'm actually safe. I am actually safe. I actually know the difference between a real threat and a perceived threat. I actually can speak up right now because I'm actually not in danger. So you can start, your true nature can start to have a conversation with this traumatic identity of yours. And so, so much more to uncover and talk about when it comes to the traumatic identity, and which we'll go over in our monthly free conscious codependence class on Monday for those of you who can make it. If you can't make it, the recording is always in the Trust Yourself Facebook group. So if you want to join that group, the link is down below. I also think that our traumatic identity can infiltrate our posture. I didn't mean to actually do that when I said the word posture, but I think that it can live inside of our posture, the way that we dress, the way that we do our hair, the way that we move through the world, the way that we are with people, the way that we connect or don't connect. It's almost like fascia. I don't know if you know what fascia is. Fascia, maybe some of you can put in the comments who know more about fascia than I do. But it covers, I believe, every single organ and tissue that we have. It is interwoven in every part of our body. This layer of fascia. It's almost like codependence and our traumatic identity can be in every, can have its presence in every part of our being and our experience of life and how we move through life. So in my work, we start to peel that apart. Our traumatic identity, we start to peel off the hold that our traumatic identity has on our true nature. So we'll go into this further on Monday, and if you can start to think, and like I said, this is not necessarily a new idea or theory. So you may have already done work on this and thought about it plenty. But if you can think about what are some of the habits, thoughts, and behaviors of your traumatic identity that you kind of know in your heart, in your soul, in your spirit is not truly you. It came from, these are habits that came, cognitive habits, behavioral habits, the way you communicate, the way you hold back communication, the way you operate in relationships, the ways in which you get triggered into the want to be wanted, the need to be needed, the need to prove yourself. What are some of these things, of all the things, I just listed a lot of things, but what are some of the things, maybe even the way that you speak to people? Do you get eye contact? Do you not get eye contact? All of it. Any ways that you can list that you truly feel, that's my traumatic identity operating and showing up. You may not know all of them, you may know some of them, you may wonder about some of them, like some of them you're just wondering, is that my traumatic identity, or is that part really me? So there might be some things that you just kind of wonder which side of you that is. Is this the side of me that's trying to keep myself safe? And that could also be very confusing. Like, what if my traumatic identity is trying to keep myself safe, but I actually really am not safe and I actually need that protection? Big question inside of conscious codependence recovery, or any codependence recovery journey. What if I actually do need to keep myself safe there? And so as we distinguish and pull away from our traumatic identity, we have more of an intuition as to what actual safety is and what it is not. What the difference between physical safety, psychological safety, spiritual safety, existential safety, who's actually a dangerous person and who's not a dangerous person. They just might threaten your self-worth on some level, but it doesn't or you may feel like your self-worth is threatened on some level around them, but doesn't necessarily mean you're literally unsafe. It's just a way in which your traumatic identity is interpreting a situation. And I want to end with this thought about the traumatic identity. Ultimately, when it comes to not feeling safe, what I want to say is that our traumatic identity isn't interested in feeling a whole lot. Our traumatic identity is the part of us that goes, oh, that feels like something. Let me set that feeling aside. Let's not expose this. Traumatic identity doesn't love being vulnerable. That's where feeling unsafe comes in. If I'm vulnerable, it feels unsafe because I'm a little exposed. Well, that's okay. It's your traumatic identity that doesn't want to be exposed. It's your traumatic identity that doesn't have the threshold or the patience or the willingness to be with your feelings. That's your traumatic identity. Your traumatic identity can't hold or acknowledge feeling. If it catches a feeling, it will go, I have a feeling it's your fault. Codependence. I have a feeling I'm having an experience. My experience is your fault. Codependence. Traumatic identity and codependence, best buds. They're best buds. Okay. Yeah, I think that's everything that I want to say on that for now. Also, you may hear me call it your default. So traumatic identity, your default psychology, same thing. Also known in my work as the loudest voice of your youngest unhealed trauma. We'll go more into that, or we go more into that in my work for sure. All right, happy Friday. Again, free monthly conscious codependence class. The December class is on Monday. Link to register for free for that is below. It's a free class. What else? Trust Yourself Facebook page down below. Thank you so much for listening to my thoughts, theories, and rants. Happy Friday, happy healing, and life is now.